In Mineral Wells, Texas, crazy water binds the dead. Screams from a VA office, laughter in Norwood Hospital, and now, Dr. Norris's hidden files whisper of experiments and Maryanne's curse. As a cop, I've taken secrets from the shadows, but they're hunting me back. Mineral Wells, Texas, is a town of shadows. Screams from a VA office, a man gasping, "He's coming!" And now, children's laughter in the abandoned Norwood Hospital, where crazy water hides a curse. As a cop, I'm chasing ghosts, and they're starting to chase me back. 5 years in Mineral Wells, and I'd learned to expect the unexpected. The town had a way of pulling you into its secrets, like a riptide you didn't see coming. A year ago, the Veterans Affairs building on SE 6th Avenue had shaken me to my core. An old man in green fatigues, pinning his hand to a desk with a letter opener, his eyes wild as he rasped, "He's coming." The whispers in the walls, the cold air that didn't belong, the glimpse of a man in a white doctor's coat, they'd stayed with me, as vivid as the crazy water bottle I'd taken from the scene. The VA was the old Milling Sanitarium, built in 1929 on the promise of mineral wells that could cure anything, even madness. But the water hadn't cured that man. It had broken him, just like it had others before. James Orr, my partner, had his own story. He told me about his great-grandmother, a woman who came to Mineral Wells in the 1920s for the wells, hoping to soothe her fractured mind. She'd stayed, had a child, and died young. Her photo by a well haunting James's family album. He'd seen her face once, years ago, in a window during a call. An elderly woman overdosed, claiming a lady told her to take the pills. James didn't believe in ghosts, not really. He wanted to, but something held him back, like a veil over his eyes. Me? I'd crossed that line. After the VA, after Pamela Allen's body on the Baker Hotel steps, whispering Virginia before she fell. I couldn't talk myself out of it. Mineral Wells was more than a town. It was a trap, and I was caught. October 2025 brought a new call, one I'd face alone. James was out with the flu, his voice hoarse over the phone, promising he'd be back in a day or two. Dispatch crackled at 9:45 p.m. Urgent. A vagrancy complaint at the Norwood Hospital, a relic on the edge of town. The place had been abandoned for decades, its walls crumbling since the last patient left. Built around 1904 by Dr. Charles Norwood and his wife. It was a private hospital, a footnote in Mineral Wells' history of healing. Rumors tied Norwood to T.B. Baker, the man behind the Baker Hotel. Maybe a business deal or shared investors, but the details were lost to time. Locals avoided the place, whispering about strange lights and noises, but the Mineral Wells PD had turned a blind eye to reports of a man living on the 3rd floor, making a racket at all hours. Not tonight. The captain's voice was firm. "Get him out, now." I pulled my squad car into the lot across from Norwood, the clock ticking past 10 p.m. The hospital squatted under a moonless sky, its brick facade choked with ivy, windows either boarded or shattered. It looked less like a building and more like a corpse, left to rot in the Texas heat. My headlights caught a flicker in a 3rd floor window. A candle maybe, or something pretending to be one. It was enough to confirm someone was up there, squatting in the ruins. I killed the engine, the silence rushing in, thick and heavy. The air smelled of dust and something sour, like the ground itself was sick. My flashlight was a mag light, heavy enough to double as a club, and I checked my holster, the weight of my service pistol grounding me. The front door was boarded tight, nails rusted but unyielding. I circled left, boots crunching on gravel, until I found a window with its glass gone, the frame a jagged mouth. I shone my light inside, catching glimpses of decay, torn wallpaper, scattered trash, a floor sagging under years of neglect. The smell hit harder here, a mix of mildew, stale beer, and something organic I didn't want to name. I climbed through, careful not to snag my uniform, and landed on creaking floorboards. The first floor was a maze of debris, old clothes in piles, empty food containers, dented cans of cheap beer. A rat skittered across the corner, its eyes glinting in my beam. An open door led to a basement, a black void that seemed to swallow the light. I'd seen enough horror movies to know better. That could wait. Mineral wells had taught me to trust my gut, and right now, it was screaming. The VA had been cold, alive with whispers, and Norwood felt the same, like the walls were holding their breath. I swept the first floor, checking offices and a collapsed waiting room, but found no one. The stairs to the second floor were ahead, narrow and warped, each step groaning under my weight. I paused, listening. The wind outside moaned through broken windows, but there was something else, a faint rustle, like fabric dragging across the floor, coming from above. My flashlight beam danced on the ceiling, catching cobwebs and water stains, but no answers. The second floor was worse, a hallway stretched into darkness, doors hanging off hinges. One room stopped me cold, a nursery, or what was left of one. Rotting bunk beds lined the walls, their mattresses sagging like decayed flesh. Stuffed toys, missing eyes or limbs, lay scattered, some staring up with faded smiles. A rocking horse sat in the center, its paint chipped, one ear gone. It wasn't moving, but I swore it had shifted since I walked in. Faded drawings on the walls showed stick figure kids holding hands, their crayon smiles too wide. The air felt thick, like I was breathing someone else's memory. It creeped me out, no question. I'd faced armed suspects with less unease, but this room, this whole place was wrong. I backed out, my beam catching a sign above the door, barely legible, pediatric ward. Of course. Mineral Wells loved its twisted ironies. The rustling came again, louder, from the third floor. I found the stairs, narrower than the last, the wood splintering underfoot. My radio crackled, but dispatch was silent, just static that sounded too much like a whisper. "It's the police," I called, my voice echoing. "If you're up there, come down." Nothing answered, but the silence was worse, heavy with intent. I gripped my flashlight tighter, the beam my only ally, and started to climb. The third floor was a black void, the air colder than it should have been for October. My light swept across empty rooms, catching glimpses of broken furniture and peeling paint. The rustling stopped, replaced by a low hum, like a voice too faint to hear. I thought of the VA, the whispers in the walls, The crazy water bottle on my counter at home, its metallic taste lingering from a single sip. Was this place tied to the wells too? Dr. Norwood's hospital, built when the town was drunk on mineral water promises. Had it drunk too deep? The candlelight I'd seen from outside was gone now, the window dark, but I felt watched, like the hospital knew I was here. Halfway down the hall, my beam caught something, a pile of blankets in a corner, shifting slightly. Someone was there, hiding, maybe waiting. My pulse kicked up, but I'd come too far to back out. "Show yourself," I said, voice steady. The blanket stirred and a hand emerged, gnarled and trembling. Whoever was under there, they weren't just a vagrant. Mineral Wells had brought me here for a reason, and I was about to find out why. Mineral Wells, Texas, is a town of shadows. Screams from a VA office, a man gasping, "He's coming." And now, children's laughter in the abandoned Norwood Hospital, where crazy water hides a curse. As a cop, I'm chasing ghosts, and they're starting to chase me back. The third floor of Norwood Hospital felt like stepping into a void, the kind that swallows light and sound and spits back something worse. My flashlight beam cut through the darkness, but it didn't feel like enough. Not after the nursery on the second floor, with its eyeless toys and rocking horse that seemed to watch me leave. The air up here was colder, heavy with dust and a metallic tang, like old blood or rusted pipes. The rustling I'd heard from the stairs had stopped, but the silence was worse, pressing against my eardrums like a warning. I'd called out, "It's the police," and got nothing back, just the wind moaning through broken windows. Mineral Wells had a way of making you feel alone, even when you knew you weren't. My boots echoed on the warped floorboards, each step kicking up clouds of grit that danced in my light. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with doorways that gaped like empty eye sockets. Some led to small rooms, old patient wards maybe, others to closets or storage, their contents long gone or rotted. A metal bed frame leaned against one wall, its springs rusted into claws. A shattered mirror hung crookedly, my reflection fractured and unfamiliar, my face pale under the uniform cap. I avoided looking too long. The VA had taught me that mirrors in places like this weren't always honest. I'd been a cop in Mineral Wells for 5 years, long enough to know the town's pulse, its bars, its drug corners, its secrets. The VA incident a year ago in 2024 had changed me. That old man, stabbing his hand to a desk, whispering, "He's coming," the air cold as a grave, and that glimpse of a white-coated figure. It wasn't just a call gone wrong. It was a door, one I'd walked through and couldn't close. The crazy water bottle I'd taken from the scene sat on my counter at home, its label faded, but its contents untouched since a single, bitter sip. The VA was the milling sanitarium once, built on the promise of mineral wells that could heal. But the water hadn't healed that man. It had broken him, and I was starting to think it was breaking others too. James Orr, my partner, didn't see it. He told me about his great-grandmother, a woman who came to Mineral Wells in the 1920s for the wells, chasing relief from a mind that wouldn't quiet. She'd stayed, raised a family, and died too young. Her photo by a well, a family heirloom. James had seen her once, years ago, in a window during a call. A woman overdosed, claiming a lady urged her on. He wanted to believe, but couldn't, like something held him back. I didn't have that luxury. After the VA, after Pamela Allen's fall at the Baker Hotel, whispering Virginia as she died, I was all in. Mineral Wells wasn't just haunted, it was alive, and it was watching. Now, in Norwood Hospital, I felt it again, that same way, like the building knew I was here. The vagrancy call was supposed to be simple. Clear out a squatter, file a report, go home. But nothing in this town was simple. The captain's orders had been sharp. Get him out tonight. No one said why the MWPD had ignored the complaints before, why this place was off limits until now. Norwood was a ghost story locals told in bars, lights in the windows, voices at night. Built in 1904 by Dr. Charles Norwood, it was a private hospital, a place for the wealthy to recover away from prying eyes. Some said Norwood knew T.B. Baker, maybe shared investors or swapped favors, but the records were scarce, buried in the town's murky past. The hospital closed decades ago, left to rot when the wells lost their shine. Now, it was a husk, and I was walking through its bones. I moved deeper into the third floor, my flashlight sweeping corners, catching glimpses of decay. A wheelchair missing a wheel, a pile of moldy linens, a syringe glinting in the dust. The rustling came again, faint but closer, from a room at the hall's end. My pulse kicked up, but I kept my voice steady. "Show yourself," I said, louder this time. The blankets in the corner stirred, a hand emerging, gnarled, trembling, the fingers twisted like old roots. I froze, my light pinned on it, waiting. This wasn't just a vagrant. This was something Mineral Wells wanted me to find. "Police," I said, stepping closer, my free hand near my holster. "Show me your hands now." The blankets shifted, falling away, and I got my first look at him. Victor, that's what he'd call himself later, was a wreck, a man carved hollow by life. He looked 50, maybe younger, but addiction had aged him, his face a map of scars and shadows. His hair was matted, graying at the roots, and his eyes, sunken and bloodshot, darted past me like he saw something I didn't. His teeth, stained dark, barely held together, and his breath was a sour mix of neglect and desperation. The smell hit me hard, worse than the hospital's rot, a mix of unwashed skin and something chemical, like he'd been burning more than candles. "Maryanne, is that you?" he mumbled, his voice slurred, barely audible. "Take me? Now?" The name, Maryanne, hit me like a shock. I didn't know why, but it felt heavy, like it carried the weight of the building itself. "Sir, I need your hands," I said, keeping my light on him. "What are you doing up here?" He stirred, pulling the blankets tighter, his eyes flickering to the shadows behind me. "The children," he said, louder now, his voice cracking. "They won't leave me alone. The poor children, missing pieces. They went to meet the doctor. The water didn't help. They always tell me. I never sleep. Are you here to take me?" His words were a gut punch. No kids had been in Norwood for decades, not since it was a hospital. But his fear was real, and it echoed the VA, where an old man raved about the water before his breakdown. I thought of the crazy water bottle at home, the stories of wells that promised healing but delivered something else. Victor's doctor and water weren't random, they were threads, tying this place to the sanitarium, to the town's cursed heart. "Hands now," I repeated, stepping closer. He complied, slowly, his fingers shaking as he raised them. They were scorched, the tips blackened from years of drug use, a common sight in Mineral Wells. The town had a drug problem, fueled by cheap homemade substances cooked from household chemicals. It was a trap. One Victor hadn't escaped, I searched him, careful but firm, my light catching the glint of a crumpled dollar bill and a piece of burnt tin foil in his pocket. Paraphernalia, enough to charge him. "Where'd you get it?" I asked, knowing the answer, but needing confirmation. "Lion's Park," he whispered, his voice hollow. The park was a known spot, a place where deals went down under cover of night. I could have arrested him for possession, but something in his eyes stopped me. He was already caught, just not by me. "Trespassing," I said, pulling him to his feet. "You're coming with me." He nodded, almost relieved, like the station was safer than this place. I cuffed him, the metal clicking in the silence, and started leading him back down the hall. The air grew colder, the shadows deeper, and I couldn't shake the feeling we weren't alone. My flashlight flickered, just for a second, and the walls seemed to hum. A low vibration I felt in my bones. Victor stumbled, his head turning toward a darkened doorway. "They're here," he whispered, his voice barely a breath. "The children." I followed his gaze, my light sweeping the doorway, but saw nothing, just darkness, thicker than it should have been. The hum stopped, replaced by a faint sound, like fabric dragging across the floor, the same rustling I'd heard before. My skin prickled, and I tightened my grip on Victor's arm. "Move," I said, pushing him toward the stairs. The third floor felt like a trap closing, and I wasn't waiting to see what sprang it. The stairs creaked under our weight, each step a reminder of how far we were from safety. Victor was quiet now, his sobs gone, but his eyes kept darting to the shadows, like he expected something to lunge. I thought of the VA, the whispers that followed me out, the crazy water that seemed to pulse in the town's veins. Norwood wasn't just abandoned, it was awake, and Victor's words were a warning. Maryanne, the doctor, the children missing pieces. They weren't delusions. They were clues, and I was starting to think they pointed to Dr. Norwood himself. Halfway down the stairs, Victor stopped, his body rigid. "Don't look," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They don't like it." I swung my flashlight back, the beam catching the hallway we'd left. For a moment I thought I saw something. A shadow, taller than a child, moving just beyond the light. My heart pounded, but when I blinked, it was gone. "Keep moving," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. Victor obeyed, but his fear was contagious, and I felt it crawling up my spine. The second floor was a blur, the nursery's toys watching us pass, their faded smiles mocking. I didn't look at the rocking horse, didn't want to know if it was still. We reached the first floor, the broken window ahead, but the hospital didn't let us go easily. The air was heavier now, like it was pushing back, and my flashlight flickered again, the beam dimming. Victor's breathing was ragged, his eyes fixed on the floor. "They're always playing," he muttered, never quiet. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. Mineral wells had shown me enough to know the answer wasn't human. We climbed through the window, the night air a shock after the hospital's suffocation. I led Victor to the squad car, my hand on his arm, but my eyes kept drifting back to Norwood. The third floor window was dark now, no candlelight, but I felt it watching, waiting. Victor's words rang in my head. The water didn't help. Neither had it at the VA, or the baker, or anywhere else in this cursed town. I opened the car door, guiding Victor inside, but he froze, his gaze locked on the hospital. "She's coming," he whispered, his voice so low I barely heard it. "Maryanne." My blood ran cold. I didn't turn around, didn't want to see what he saw. But as I shut the door, the wind carried a sound, faint, distant, like children laughing or crying or both. Mineral Wells, Texas, is a town of shadows. Screams from a VA office, a man gasping. He's coming. And now, children's laughter in the abandoned Norwood Hospital, where crazy water weaves a curse. As a cop, I'm chasing ghosts, and they're closing in. Victor's whisper, Maryanne's coming, hung in the air like a blade, sharp and cold, as we stood on the third floor of Norwood Hospital. The darkness seemed to tighten around us, the shadows deeper than they'd been moments ago. My flashlight beam flickered, casting jagged shapes on the peeling walls, and for a heartbeat I swore I heard it again. That faint, childlike laughter, carried on a wind that shouldn't there. Victor's eyes, bloodshot and wide, darted to the doorway we passed, his cuffed hands trembling in my grip. I didn't look. I couldn't. Mineral Wells had taught me that some things were better left unseen, like the figure in the white coat at the VA, or the voice that had whispered Virginia before Pamela Allen's body hit the Baker Hotel steps. "Move!" I snapped, my voice harsher than I meant, pulling Victor toward the stairs. He stumbled, his boots dragging, as if the hospital itself was holding him back. The air was colder now, a damp chill that seeped into my bones, like the VA's whispering corridor a year ago. That night, an old man's screams had led me to a locked office, his hand pinned by a letter opener, raving about the water. The crazy water bottle I'd taken from his desk was still at home, its label curling like a secret. The VA was the Millings Asylum, built in 1929 to harness the town's mineral springs, promising to cure madness. It hadn't cured him. It had cursed him. And now, in Norwood, I felt that same curse, heavy and alive. Norwood Hospital wasn't just abandoned, it was watching. Built in 1904 by Dr. Charles Norris, it was a private retreat for the wealthy, a place to heal away from the world. Locals said Norris knew T.B. Baker, maybe shared a stake in the mineral wells that made Mineral Wells famous. The hospital closed decades ago, its patients gone, its records lost or hidden. The third floor, where Victor had been hiding, was a graveyard of memories. Rusted bed frames, shattered glass, a faded chart on the wall listing hydrotherapy sessions. The word sent a chill through me, echoing the VA's water treatments. The crazy water that promised miracles but delivered madness. Victor's breathing was ragged, his steps uneven as we reached the stairs. My flashlight flickered again, the beam dimming, and I tapped it against my palm, cursing under my breath. The darkness seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat in the walls. "They're here," Victor muttered, his voice barely audible. "The children." I tightened my grip on his arm, my eyes fixed on the stairwell. The steps were narrow, splintered, each one creaking under our weight. I kept my light ahead, but the shadows behind us felt closer, like they were following. The second floor opened before us, its hallway a mirror of the third, doors ajar, walls stained with time. The nursery was to our left, its door half open, and I avoided looking inside. Those toys, eyeless and smiling, the rocking horse that hadn't moved but felt like it could. They were burned into my mind from the climb up. Victor's head turned toward it, his eyes glassy, like he saw something I didn't. "They're always playing," he said, his voice a broken whisper, never quiet. "Keep moving," I said, pulling him past the nursery. My flashlight caught a glint on the wall ahead, near the stairwell to the first floor. I slowed, my beam steadying, and my stomach dropped. Scrawled in a dark, sticky substance, paint maybe or something worse, was a single word: Maryanne. The letters were uneven, dripping, like they'd been written in a hurry or a frenzy. Victor saw it and froze, a low sob escaping his throat. His cuffed hands twitched as if he wanted to cover his face, hide from the word itself. "What is this?" I asked, my voice low, not expecting an answer. Victor's sobs grew louder, his body shaking. "She's here," he said, his voice cracking. "Maryanne, the children. They know her." His words hit like a shockwave, tying back to his ramblings upstairs. "Maryanne, is that you? And the children, missing pieces." I thought of the VA, the old man's "he's coming," the crazy water that seemed to pulse through every horror in this town. Maryanne wasn't just a name. She was a presence, and this hospital was her domain. I pulled Victor forward, my eyes locked on the stairs. The air was thicker now, like breathing through damp cloth, and my flashlight flickered again, the beam stuttering. The Maryanne message seemed to glow in the dark, its edges sharper than they should have been. I didn't touch it, didn't want to know what it was made of. The nursery's door creaked behind us, a slow, deliberate sound, like someone or something had pushed it open. I didn't look back. I'd learned that lesson at the VA, and the whispers followed me out. When the white-coated figure vanished in a blink, the first floor was a blur, the broken window our only escape. The hospital's decay surrounded us, piles of trash, shattered furniture, a faded sign reading "reception" above a collapsed desk. My boots crunched on glass, the sound too loud in the silence. Victor was quiet now, his sobs gone, but his eyes were wide, fixed on the shadows. I felt it too, that sense of being watched, like the hospital was alive, its walls holding secrets it didn't want to share. We reached the window, the night air a shock after the hospital's suffocation. I helped Victor through, his cuffed hands clumsy, his body trembling. My flashlight beam caught the edge of the window frame, and for a moment, I thought I saw something reflected in the glass. A face, pale and eyeless, gone before I could focus. My heart pounded, but I climbed out, landing on the gravel outside, pulling Victor with me. The squad car was across the street, its headlights dark, the lot silent except for the wind. I led Victor to the car, my hand on his arm, but my eyes kept drifting back to Norwood. The third-floor window, where I'd seen the candlelight on arrival, was dark now, a black void in the building's facade. I found no candles upstairs, no lanterns, nothing to explain that light. Victor's words, "the children, missing pieces," echoed in my head, mixing with the VA's whispers, the crazy water that seemed to flow through every tragedy in this town. I opened the car door, guiding Victor inside, but he froze, his gaze locked on the hospital. "They're laughing," he said, his voice so soft I barely caught it. I paused, listening. The wind carried a sound, faint, distant, like children giggling, or maybe crying, a melody that wasn't quite human. My skin crawled, and I slammed my flashlight into my belt, the weight grounding me. I didn't look at the window, didn't want to see that light again, but I knew it was there, waiting. As I started the engine, the radio crackled, static laced with a low hum, like the one I'd felt in the hospital's walls. Victor sat in the back, his head bowed, his cuffed hands still. "They didn't mean to," he muttered, almost to himself. "They just wanted to see the doctor." I didn't ask who or what he meant by missing pieces. I'd seen enough in mineral wells to know some questions didn't have answers, or at least not ones you wanted. Driving away, the hospital's silhouette receded in my rearview mirror, but it didn't feel like I'd left it behind. The Maryanne message burned in my mind, its dripping letters, a warning, or a promise. I thought of the VA, the old man's madness, The crazy water bottle that seemed to hum when I wasn't looking. Norwood wasn't just a haunted building. It was a piece of a puzzle, one that stretched back to Dr. Norris, to the wells, to a town that had drunk too deeply from something it couldn't control. The laughter followed me, faint but relentless, carried on the wind. I glanced at Victor, expecting to see fear, but his eyes were empty now, like he'd given up something he couldn't name. The station was a few miles away, a safe haven I didn't trust anymore. Mineral Wells wasn't done with me, and I wasn't done with it. The crazy water was the key, and Maryanne was its voice. I'd find out who she was, what she wanted, and why the children, whatever they were still here, missing pieces, laughing and waiting. Mineral Wells, Texas, is a town of shadows. Screams from a VA office, a man gasping, he's coming. And now, children's laughter in the abandoned Norwood Hospital, where crazy water weaves a curse. As a cop, I'm chasing ghosts, and they're closing in. The Maryanne message on Norwood Hospital's wall was a splinter in my mind, sharp and unyielding. Victor's sobs, the children's laughter in the wind, the flashlight beam that shouldn't have flickered, they followed me home, lingering like the aftertaste of crazy water I'd sipped once and never touched again. 3 days after the vagrancy call, I couldn't shake the feeling that Mineral Wells was pulling me deeper, its secrets unraveling one thread at a time. The VA incident a year ago, screams, a man pinning his hand to a desk, whispering, "He's coming," had been my first warning. The crazy water bottle from that night sat on my apartment counter, its label curling, a reminder of a town that promised healing but delivered madness. Now, Norwood had given me another piece of the puzzle, and I needed someone to help me see the whole picture. James Orr, still recovering from the flu, had pointed me to Mary Scott. She taught him in school, a retired teacher with a reputation for knowing Mineral Wells history. Not the tourist version, but the truth buried beneath. "She's discreet," James had said, his voice hoarse over the phone. "If anyone knows, it's does." James didn't believe in ghosts, despite seeing his great-grandmother's ghost in a window years ago during an overdose call. He wanted to believe it, but couldn't, like a veil blocked his sight. I was past that. The VA, Pamela Allen's fall at the Baker Hotel, whispering, "He's coming." Victor's ramblings, they were connected, and crazy water was the thread. I drove to Mary's house on a crisp October afternoon in 2025, plain clothes to avoid attention. Her cottage was outside town, a brick house nestled behind oaks, its driveway winding past a pond where ducks glided. Dogs barked in the yard, tails wagging, and the air smelled of earth and cedar, a stark contrast to Norwood's decay. The house was modest, with flower boxes and a sagging porch, a sanctuary from the town shadows. But I was uneasy. The Maryanne message and Victor's children, missing pieces, echoing in my head. Mary answered the door, 60s, greying hair in a bun, eyes kind but sharp, like a teacher who'd seen it all. Her smile was warm, like she'd expected me. "You're James's officer friend," she said, stepping aside. "Come in, dear." I nodded, stepping into a living room smelling of lavender, with bookshelves stuffed with binders, journals, and faded maps. A fireplace crackled, casting shadows, and Mary poured iced tea, the clink of ice grounding me. "Thank you, ma'am," I said, sitting, my hands fidgeting. We sipped tea, small talk about James easing me in. "He was stubborn," Mary said, chuckling, always asking why. Her eyes twinkled, but her fingers tightened around her glass. I took a breath. "Mary, I've seen things in Mineral Wells I can't explain. Spirits, shadows, things others miss. Does that sound crazy? I asked. She leaned forward, her gaze steady. Do you drink the crazy water? She asked. I shook my head. No, I've got a bottle, unopened, at home. Her smile tightened. Good. Keep it that way. She set her glass down, her voice lowering. This town's not what it seems. I call it mineral hells, not wells. It started with James Alvis Lynch, 1881, when he dug that first well. He was no hero, greedy, ruthless, chasing wealth. That water, high in lithium, promised healing, but it brought something else, something dark. I leaned in, the VA's whispers echoing in my memory. What's in the water? I asked. Mary's eyes darkened. Lynch tapped into more than minerals. The wells woke something, tied spirits to this place. The water blinds folks, James, Pamela, the man at the VA. They drink it their whole lives, can't see the truth. It makes them open to suggestion, even possession. You and I, we don't drink it. We see what's really here. Her words hit like a shockwave, explaining James's skepticism, the VA man's madness. Victor's water didn't help. I thought of the crazy water bottle, its faint hum. What's it doing to them? I asked. Mary sighed, glancing at a photo on the mantel, a young woman by a well, 1920s dress. My aunt, she said, came for the water, stayed, went mad, saw things, heard voices. The water's lithium calms the mind, but there's more, something science can't measure. It keeps the dead close, lets them whisper. I swallowed, Victor's children in my ears. What about Dr. Norris? I asked. Mary's brow furrowed. Charles Norris, osteopath, built Norwood in 1904. Private hospital for the rich. He worked with T.B. Baker, maybe shared well profits. Rumors said he did more than heal. Experiments, treatments not in any book. His nurse, Maryanne, ran the wards. She was loyal, maybe too loyal. Some say records are hidden in Norwood, maybe the basement, but no one's found them. The basement. That dark door I'd avoided flashed in my mind. What kind of experiments? I asked. Mary shrugged, her eyes distant. No proof, just whispers. Patients vanished, children mostly. Locals blamed the water, said it drove Norris mad. Maryanne stayed till the end, till the hospital closed. Some say she never left. I thought of the Maryanne message, Victor's fear. Is she still there? I asked. Mary's gaze met mine, unflinching. This town holds its ghosts. The water binds them. You've seen it, the VA, Norwood. They're linked, through Lynch's wells, through what he unleashed. She paused, her voice softening. Be careful, dear. You're not blind like the others, but that makes you a target. I nodded, my mind racing. The VA's white-coated figure, Victor's doctor, the crazy water bottle. They were pieces of a curse, and Maryanne was its heart. I thanked Mary, promising to share what I found, and left, her warning heavy. The oaks outside seemed to whisper as I drove away. Mineral Wells, closing in. Mineral Wells, Texas, is a town of shadows. Screams from a VA office, a man gasping, he's coming. And now, children's laughter in the abandoned Norwood Hospital, where crazy water weaves a curse. As a cop, I'm chasing ghosts, and they're closing in. Mary Scott's words were a weight I couldn't shake, her voice echoing as I drove back to Mineral Wells. Mineral Hells, a town cursed by crazy water. Victor's ramblings, Maryanne, the children, missing pieces. The water didn't help. Fit too neatly with the VA man's madness, Pamela Allen's whispers, James Orr's great-grandmother. They'd all drunk the water, lived in its shadow, blind to the spirits Mary and I could see. The Maryanne message on Norwood's wall, the flashlight beam that flickered without a source. the laughter in the wind. They were warnings, and I was starting to listen. 5 years as a cop in Mineral Wells, and I never felt so out of my depth. James wanted to believe in ghosts, but couldn't. His great-grandmother's face in a window, just a story. I was past that. The VA's screams, Norwood's shadows, the crazy water bottle humming on my counter. They were real, pieces of a puzzle I couldn't ignore. Mary's theory made sense. The waters, lithium, maybe something more. Trapped spirits here made locals like James, Pamela, and Victor vulnerable. I didn't drink it. Hadn't since that one sip, and that's why I saw what they couldn't. Mary mentioned Dr. Norris's nurse, Maryanne, and hidden records in Norwood's basement. The basement, that dark, gaping door I'd avoided during the vagrancy call, loomed in my mind. Victor's children and the doctor weren't delusions. They pointed to Norris, to experiments Mary only whispered about. The crazy water linked it all. VA, Baker, Norwood. A curse flowing from James Elvis Lynch's 1881 well. I had to find those records, uncover what Norris did, why Maryanne's name was scrawled in that hospital, why the children laughed. That night, October 2025, I parked my squad car across from Norwood, on duty to avoid questions. The hospital squatted under a moonless sky, its brick facade a silhouette of decay. I told dispatch I was checking a noise complaint, a lie to buy time. The third floor window flickered, a light when no light should be, just like before. No candles, no lanterns, just mineral wells playing its games. I grabbed my satchel from the trunk, my flashlight heavy in my hand, and crossed the street, the gravel crunching under my boots. The broken window was my way in, its jagged frame unchanged. The air inside was stale, thick with mildew and something sour, like the hospital was breathing. My flashlight cut through the dark, revealing the first floor's debris. Torn clothes, empty cans, a rat skittering into the shadows. The basement door gaped ahead, a black void I'd ignored last time. Not tonight. Mary's words, "You're a target," rang in my ears, but I'd come too far to turn back. The first floor was quiet, too quiet, the silence pressing like a hand on my chest. I moved past the collapsed reception desk, its sign barely legible, and checked the hallway. The stairs to the second floor creaked, leading to the nursery I'd rather forget. Eyeless toys, a rocking horse that seemed to sway. I didn't go up. The basement was my goal, where Mary said the records might be. Victor's children, missing pieces, and the doctor haunted me, tied to Norris's rumors of experiments, children who vanished. The basement door was heavier than I remembered, its hinges rusted. My flashlight beam flickered, the battery fresh but faltering, like Norwood was draining it. I pushed the door open, the creak echoing, and stepped onto the stairs. They were wooden, splintered, 10 steps down. I counted each one, a habit from training. If I lost my light, I'd need to know my way back. The air grew damp, musty, the smell of earth and decay thickening. At the bottom, my boots hit dirt, the basement unfinished, a raw wound under the hospital. The space was vast, shadows swallowing my light. Old equipment littered the floor, rusted gurneys, a broken chair, vials glinted in the dust. No filing cabinets, no papers, just junk. I cursed under my breath, moving deeper. The walls were brick, cracked from years of neglect, and a faint hum vibrated through them like the VA's whispers. My flashlight flickered again and I tapped it, the beam steadying. Something moved in the corner, a shadow taller than a child, gone when I turned. My pulse spiked, but I kept going. Mary's warning loud in my head. A second room was darker. A coal stove against one wall, bricks scattered around it. I noticed a crack in the brickwork, running from the floor to the ceiling, like the wall had shifted. I knelt, my light catching the loose mortar. The bricks weren't set right, like they'd been laid in a hurry. I pushed one, and it gave, tumbling into a void behind. My heart raced. This wasn't just a wall, it was a cover, hiding something Norris didn't want found. I pulled more bricks, creating a small opening, barely wide enough to crawl through. The air beyond was colder, sharper, like stepping into a crypt. I hesitated, Victor's laughter echoing, but Mary's words pushed me forward. The records are there. I crawled through, my satchel catching, and stood in a hidden room. Wooden filing cabinets lined the walls, their brass labels glinting. Patients, treatments, experimental. The last one stopped me cold. Experimental. Victor's missing pieces, Mary's rumors. They started here. I reached for the experimental drawer, my hand trembling, and the hum grew louder, like voices too faint to hear. My flashlight flickered and the air shifted, heavy with intent. I froze, feeling eyes on me, the same weight I'd felt at the VA at Norwood's third floor. The laughter came again, soft, childlike from the shadows. "Maryanne's here," a voice whispered, not Victor's, not human. I spun, my light catching nothing, but the room felt smaller, the walls closer. I grabbed my satchel, ready to run, but the drawer creaked open, revealing folders thick with dust. I didn't read them, couldn't, not there, but I knew they held answers. The laughter swelled, a nursery rhyme I didn't want to hear. One for tongue and two for nose. I bolted, crawling back through the wall, the basement stairs a blur. 10 steps up, 22 to the window, my training kicking in. The hospital seemed to scream as I climbed out, the night air a shock. Back in the squad car, I clutched the satchel, my hand shaking. The third floor window flickered, a light that wasn't mine, and the laughter followed, carried on the wind. Ding dong, Maryanne's here. I drove away, Norwood's silhouette fading, but the records burned in my mind. Mineral Wells wasn't just haunted, it was a trap, and I'd just stepped deeper.